Mm.
Marvin, you had said in the beginning that in the North American context that we are not, at least presently, seeing a stoppage of receiving funds. But I'm keenly aware of, as I've talked with different mission leaders, that there are some challenges being presented right now, specifically with maybe not as much receiving the funds as sending the funds. Also, where we see cash societies and the church can't meet physically, we're seeing that offerings are there being impacted. And so here's my question: how are we responding to some of this? How are we responding to our ability to send money, for it to flow? Right now, some of the economies, because of the way the world economy is being shaken, some economies are tanking. The price of their currency is wildly fluctuating. And so I'm just wondering, how are we managing some of the movement of money, some of the challenges around that?
By God's grace, either from my partner's experience or from my Comivam experience, the flow of resources are still moving basically in the same way. So going from Latin American countries to, if I may say, 1040 window countries, or Europe, without big, obstacles. The kind of obstacles that we had previously in the Arab world were there before the virus, that were happening already before. So our concerns are with the new sending missionary movements in a particular season like this. Some of them are already facing some challenges. From my Latin American side, I have heard already a number of mission societies in the Latino world doing some extra efforts in order to raise resources for their people on the field. And regarding my colleagues in the Arab world, we have seen some challenges trying to raise some extra funds for some of their activities. So for some of the new mission sending movement, seems like, yes, we are already experiencing some turbulence.
In terms of financing, I think the receiving of funding hasn't been impacted as much as the sending of fund. But the receiving of fund has been impacted in cash-based economy, where churches can only receive fund if you are together on Sunday and you pass around a plate, or you move people, they put the money in a box, something. Majority of economies have some means of online giving. And we realize that for many churches, that has helped them. But we also realize that there are actually churches, even in the Western world, that didn't have that means. So that is a reality. For us, because people can give generally online in most of our countries, that has not been impacted. But the sending of money, so for example, for workers who come from cash economy, that has been a challenge, because if the church is not meeting and they cannot collect offering, or your donors or supporters cannot get together to put the money together and send to the receiving office, then that's a problem. That is the piece, the bit that we have seen has changed. The fact that some workers have not been able to receive their normal support because their churches couldn't get together. Not because the churches don't want to support them. They just can't get together to put the money together like they would normally do. But in our system, we do have a backup that helps those workers. We have what we call a limited pool system that is, we pool resources within SIM. All workers that are assigned outside their country of service and some within their country of service, their country of origin, as they go out, their support goes through a pool. We call it limited pool because it doesn't care for everything. That pool always has some reserve where if your support drop suddenly, say for example, a major church that supports you suddenly undergo a problem and they couldn't support you anymore, or a supporter drops because they fall on hard times, or suddenly your country's currency is devalued such that your support that was worth so much is no longer worth that much. Because we have this limited pool that kind of balance things out, a worker in that situation will not have to immediately leave their place of ministry and go back home because they no longer have money. The pool system provides a time, at least a year period, to allow the worker first to try to raise the extra funds that they will need to replace the lost income. Or if they cannot do it, then they have a year to plan whether they need to go back home at the end of that year to raise more funds and come back. But they don't have to pack their bag and leave simply because they've lost some support or because their currency has been severely impacted. This pool kind of covered that gap for them for a time, because that system allows workers to remain serving wherever they are for at least the whole year that they're there before they now have to go and look for additional funding. But in this case, since we know that at least at this moment, this seems to be a temporary thing, we expect, churches are beginning to come back together in some places, even though in limited number. We do anticipate that some of those initial problem of cash-based economy will begin to diminish, and perhaps those workers will get their support. So the sending and receiving of fund has been impacted in one way, especially mostly in cash economy, but hasn't been that impacted in other ways in economies where online giving has been well developed. In terms of organizationally, and especially the local entities, some have seen increased giving rather than a decreased giving, which is very encouraging. We praise God for that and for the generosity of God's people. And it's more difficult for some than others, depending on their context. But most of those that has received, say, perhaps decreased giving will be those that have been impacted with the same phenomenon that's impacting the workers, which means their supporters or churches cannot get together. So that kind of is, where with what we see right now. So looking forward, we need to think about what needs to change in order that we don't get into that same situation again. But that's not just working as mission organizations. That will take working intentionally with our local church partners, the churches that send workers, and helping them think through what are those things, the lessons from this experience that they can carry into what the future look like in terms of both their own support as a church, because we know pastors right now that can't get paid because the churches couldn't meet. So their own need as a church, but also the need of their workers.
It's interesting that our experience in Panama, at least from this side of the world, it's very similar. I mean, we are not impacted so much in terms of finances. The impact in this area has been small, but that could change rapidly. I mean, by the end of the year 2020, 25% of the Panamanian people will be unemployed. So that's a big challenge. But the biggest impact that we are experiencing right now, it's in the in the way of giving and receiving, it has been transformational for us. I mean, we have seen generosity emerge in the middle of the great need. Some of our ministry donors have been unable to continue their giving. However, we have seen several donors and churches stepping up to fill in the financial gap. And that's amazing. It doesn't mean that is not much happening, because when you see what's going on inside the organization with our people, I have to say some of our candidates have lost their own source of income, and their sending churches have been financially impacted, and this has affected their ability to help them in their training. I have to say that in sending some of the new missionaries, this sending has been postponed and we have no dates now. Short-term trips has been canceled. Meetings with pastors, leaders, partners has been suspended. Even some workers have been afraid and not knowing what to do. But at the end of the day, it made us reflect on, first of all, how to be ready for this. Can we ready for this? But on the other hand, for us, the biggest lesson was, let's stop and think. Do we really believe that God is the source of everything we need in life and mission? Do we really believe that? So this situation in our context just brought us to our knees. We are seeking the Lord, as Mary said before, more than before. We are praying together every single day, all together. Even in isolation, we are more connected to prayer together. We have taken some time to reflect on God's sovereignty and talk about adaptation and change. We have made some major adjustments just to keep on going with our work, activating some emergency funds to help our missionaries, raising some funds for scholarships for the candidates in the pipeline so they can continue with their training. And we are even changing our mobilization strategy and trying to do our events just as online campaigns. We also encourage our missionaries to be prudent, but also to think out of the box and make a difference where they are. We encourage our staff. This is not the time to ask people for money because we don't know everyone's situation, but this is the time to be generous, starting from us. And the beautiful thing is that we are understanding right now that this is the time to focus more on people and relationships than programs and events. So we are rediscovering things that we knew it, but we were not considering this like the one thing that we have to hug in these kind of times. I mean, unity, generosity, believe. God is the source of everything in life and mission. Are we really walking on that truth? Are we really believing in that? So that's the challenge for us in this time of need. And that's the beautiful surprise that God gave us, to see generosity emerging from this great need in this time.